The ability to hurl small coins, rip off your own body parts, control a few bees, or listen to the radio might not seem especially superheroic. But that didn't stop these aspiring heroes from giving it their all. You can usually tell whether or not a hero is a heavy hitter based on the team they end up on, and that's definitely true for Kefirab Chibes, otherwise known as Antennae Lad or Antennae Boy, depending on what you're reading. An alien from the planet Grixior, Antennae Lad first appeared in Adventure Comics in 1963. As a member of the Legion of Substitute Heroes, he's part of a team of rejects who were turned down for roles in the more reputable Legion of Superheroes during a membership drive after the death of Lightning Lad. Sure, these rejects are written to be nearly useless, but they're still real DC Comics heroes. Antennae Lad can tune in and rebroadcast radio signals from whatever planet he's on, from the past, present, or future. Hearing into the future could be a pretty unique and impressive ability, but Antennae Lad isn't able to control his power, so he mostly just annoys the people around him. Craig Hollis is the only member of the species Homo Supreme, which is one step up from Homo Superior, Marvel Comics' usual designation for mutants. After he learned that he couldn't die due to a pact his mother made with the cosmic being Death Urge, he became the superhero known as Mr. Immortal and founded the Great Lakes Avengers. And yes, the GLA is another team written to be ridiculous. On the surface, Mr. Immortal's inability to die sounds great, but it's actually a curse. It didn't take long for Hollis to begin suffering mental anguish about his condition, once realizing that everyone he knows is going to die. Before deciding to become a superhero, Hollis engaged in several attempts to end his own life, only to spring back to life again. As Mr. Immortal, Hollis has no other powers except standard heroic athleticism, so he makes himself a target to protect his team. Unfortunately, his depressed mental state remains his greatest obstacle, as does his uncontrollable rage every time he comes back to life. He's useful in a fight as a diversion, but so is a smoke bomb. The Green Lantern Corps is made up of some of the most powerful, ring-slinging beings in the universe, right? Well, once in a while, a Guardian makes a weird choice when searching for a new host for a power ring. Enter Chip, a space rodent who apparently had more willpower and fearlessness than any other alien in Space Sector 1014. Chip isn't even the weirdest Green Lantern. Liesel Pan is a virus, Flodo Span is a cloud of gas, and one is an entire planet. Chip comes from a planet populated by intelligent animals resembling Earth creatures. He looks like a squirrel, though some artists make him look more like a chipmunk, which makes more sense given his name. It's not his life, but his death that makes him a little ridiculous. Unfortunately, despite having the powers of a Green Lantern, he also had their weaknesses, specifically things that are yellow. He met his match when he was hit by a yellow truck and flattened. He was resurrected as a Black Lantern during the Blackest Night event, and returned to the grave soon after. Drew Recept, aka Infectious Lass, is another member of the intentionally goofy legion of substitute heroes. Her species is host to colonies of microorganisms that don't make her ill, but can make others sick. When she tried out for the Legion of Superheroes, she demonstrated her abilities on Starboy, who ended up getting dragged out on a stretcher. It's a potentially useful superpower, but she can't fully control it. A person can become sick just by being around her. That makes her more of a liability than an asset. She's also been known to miss her target and make the wrong person sick. So while Infectious Lass does try her best, her lack of control makes her dangerous. Madame Fatal is an odd character, first published in the pages of 1940s Crack Comics #1, alongside other questionable crime fighters like The Clock and Wizard Wells. But here's the twist. The Madam is a man. His real name is Richard Stanton, and he's an actor who puts his skill set to use by dressing up as an old woman to fight crime. Think of Bruce Wayne with all of his abilities, good looks, money, and style, but take away the Bat costume and have him dress up as someone's grandmother. Stanton got into crime fighting when his daughter was kidnapped, putting on his old lady costume and creeping into the criminal underworld to find her. Stanton ultimately learned that his daughter was alive, and he continued fighting crime as Madame Fatal. It's almost genius. Who would suspect that a little old lady is capable of beating the snot out of a goon? Still, as clever as that is, like many heroes of the era, Madame Fatal has no superpowers. She's just an actor in good shape who can throw a punch, no trick arrows or cool batarangs, and when your only gimmick is a white wig and a granny dress, you're not really bound for glory. Marvel Comics mutants run the gamut in terms of appearance and abilities, and unfortunately, that results in a lot of weirdos like Hector and Dozer, better known as Wraith. Not to be confused with the 7 or so other Marvel characters also called Wraith. This Wraith's ability is simple. He can turn partially invisible. Unfortunately, the only part he can turn invisible is his skin, revealing all of his internal organs, which is a bit disturbing. He was a member of the X-Men for only a short time. Wraith can turn other skin translucent as well, but only an area the general size of his own body. This is probably a little disorienting, and maybe even the beginning of an existential crisis for the individual who can see their own bones, but the ability is severely limited. Plus, when Wraith does this, he temporarily becomes normal again. Ultimately, Wraith's ability is more unsettling than it is useful in a fight. Back in 1940, when the Red Bee was introduced in the pages of Hit Comics #1, most heroes were spies, detectives, or vigilantes with bags of practical tricks with no supernatural powers. Richard Raleigh, aka the Red Bee, would fight crime at night while prosecuting the evildoers of Superior City during the day as an assistant DA. While he has no powers, he's highly skilled in the odd combination of controlling bugs and marksmanship. He carries a gun that shoots stingers and attacks his enemies with highly trained bees that he keeps in his belt buckle. He even has a favorite bee named Michael, and he can mess you up. While wacky by today's standards, the character was a successful crime fighter during his time period. But today, he's such a comically weird character that DC brought in an older version of the Red Bee to team up with Peacemaker for some laughs in 2023's Peacemaker Tries Hard miniseries. Becca Parker was the late superhero known as Genie, a powerful member of the X-Force for exactly one issue. From the start, her iteration of the team was destined to die. Genie could generate powerful seismic waves in proportion to how drunk she was. A sober Genie had no powers, but she proved herself effective on several missions, though constantly drinking to empower oneself wasn't the best message to send to the team's fans. An in-universe problem with drinking alcohol to trigger a mutant ability is that being drunk made it difficult to hit a target, and it also made her very surly. This was too much for the X-Force. Genie's handler sent her to her death as part of a publicity stunt involving a boy band that had been captured by terrorists. Dagwentim hails from Zwen, a planet of aliens who can transform into stone as a way to survive the planet's long nights, which last about half an Earth year. Dag attempted to join the Legion of Superheroes as Stone Boy, but the fact that all he can actually do is fall asleep and turn into stone made that a long shot. Sure, you could use him as a battering ram or drop him on someone, but other than that, Dag's pretty useless. Like so many others, he turned to the Legion of Substitute Heroes instead. Stone Boy eventually gained the ability to remain conscious while in his stone state. After that, he gained the ability to move, and finally, he learned how to transform only parts of his body into stone. That's better than basically becoming a statue, but Stone Boy is still far from the first hero you'd call when trouble finds you. Marvel's Jay Pennington Pennypacker was an accountant introduced in the pages of 1992's NFL Super Pro #10 as one of a group of guys who attended a special camp to help men find their self-esteem. Of course, it was all a front for an evil scientist to use them as guinea pigs for his own experiments. In what turns out to be a not very serious issue, the dweeby Pennypacker gains the ability to shoot loose change from his hands. He adopts the name Almighty Dollar to fight crime as a member of the Happy Campers. The hero had no real combat skills, but there's seemingly no limit on the number of coins he can discharge. Almighty Dollar only ever appeared in the issue he was introduced in, so it's unknown if he ever went on to fight crime a few cents at a time. Like many of these heroes, Friendly Fire was created as a joke character, alongside others like Dog Welder and the perverted Bueno Excelente. Friendly Fire was probably the most powerful member of DC Comics' intentionally offensive Section 8 team, and could generate blasts of energy from his hands. Unfortunately, he didn't have the best aim, and often hit the other members of his team. Because of this, he took on the name Friendly Fire, and continued blasting his allies and innocent bystanders. You'd think that massive power would make him the leader of the team, but he became more of a liability than anything else. He also proved to be a deadly danger to himself, because in Hitman issue number 55, Friendly Fire accidentally blasts his own head off. If it's not clear yet, the Legion of Substitute Heroes isn't the greatest superhero organization. Another member is Ulu Vak, aka Color Kid. He hails from the planet Lupra, where he was empowered by light from another dimension, giving him the ability to alter the color of any object. While that's an ability that would make any interior decorator the best in the business, it's not incredibly useful as a superpower. Color Kid isn't totally useless. He can change the color of yellow objects, protecting Green Lanterns from harm. He made Stone Boy look like green kryptonite to scare off some marauding super pets, and he changed green kryptonite into blue to protect Superboy and Supergirl. He later adopted the name Color King and briefly Color Queen when he accidentally became a woman, but there was nothing royal about his powers. He still did the same thing. Sure, he may be useful in a handful of very specific situations, but Color Kid is still one of the least useful superheroes ever. Tenzil Chem is from the planet Bismol, a not-so-subtle reference to Pepto-Bismol. For some reasons that will become clear, Bismol had once faced a plague of microbes that made all food on the planet inedible. So, Bismol's inhabitants evolved to be able to eat anything with no negative repercussions. Tenzil left his home world and managed to find a place in the Legion of Superheroes. He adopted the name Matter-Eater Lad and remained a member of the team for a while before returning home to serve in Bismol's Senate. While with the Legion, Matter-Eater Lad did what his name promised. He ate stuff, locks, bombs, literally anything that needed to be destroyed. Having a guy around who can eat harmful and otherwise indestructible things is never bad in the world of superheroes, though it's unclear how he manages to do this other than a general understanding that he can eat anything. It's an interesting power on paper, but there aren't too many dangerous situations you can eat your way out of. Floyd Belkin was one of the first people to try out for the Legion of Superheroes, and he holds the distinction of being the first to reject because all he does is rip off his own arms. There aren't a lot of uses for a detached arm, though Arm Fall-Off Boy typically uses them as blunt weapons. It's off-putting and truly weird, making Arm Fall-Off Boy one of the most ridiculous characters in comics. That was always the point though, since most Legion applicants weren't that good. The character only appeared in a handful of issues over the years, and eventually took on the less ridiculous name Splitter. And to his credit, he's probably one of only a few characters capable of literal unarmed combat. Nathan Fillion played a similar character called TDK in the Suicide Squad, but his power was just as useless.
What the f***?